So in the last class, we had looked at the Mendel's postulate and the monohybrid cross. So just to quickly revise with respect to the monohybrid cross, we know when the homozygous parents, one for dominant phenotype, other for recessive phenotype, and they are taken, they will produce in F1 generation the heterozygous offspring, and when the F1 generation offsprings they were crossed with each other or self-pollinated. In that case, what we get is the phenotypic ratio of 3:1, 3 with the dominant phenotype being expressed and 1 with the recessive phenotype. And the genotype ratio will be 1 homozygous dominant, other 1 homozygous recessive, heterozygous individual. So that way the phenotype and genotype they are assessed in the monohybrid cross. And then we had also looked at what are different postulates and so on, what leads to ultimately different laws that Mendel tried to, not Mendel, the others tried to formulate later after Mendel's experiment. So these are the laws. We will come back to these laws later because I guess we should first go ahead with the terminologies, different symbols and terminologies and so on. So there are usually two methods when we talk of genetics. There are two methods. One is called as classical method and the other one is just plus minus method. That's how sometimes people refer to it. So in classical method, we like Mendel, which Mendel has also referred to, which has English alphabets to represent a factor. That means if it is a tall, we will use capital T to show the dominant tallness, and for recessive factor, that is dwarfness or shortness, it will be used as small t. That is the English alphabets being used. So if it is a green color or yellow color, then it will be shown with the respective alphabet, like usually depending on like in this case, where is that chart? Yeah, for example, here these were the different traits. So position of the flower, whether axial or terminal, then it is used as capital A and small a for the terminal flowers. Purple flower, capital P and small p for white flower. So depending on that, the labels or the what do you say, the alphabetical letters were used to designate particular trait or particular factor. Like at earlier time, like I mentioned, they were still called as factor because the genes and alleles and this terminology came in later. So that is one method. In another method, which uses the plus sign for the wild type and the use of the first letter of the mutant character, either as a capital or small, depending on whether the mutant is dominant or recessive. Based on that, but one is plus sign, the other one is whatever like that character is. So, for example, in tall and dark character of the pea plant, the wild or tall characters, they are represented by plus plus because this is homozygous dominant, right? And if it is dwarf character, that is homozygous dwarf or homozygous recessive, that will be small dd. And when it is heterozygous, that will be indicated by plus, which is dominant, and d, which is shown here. So plus oblique d. So that is the heterozygous individual. So this is just another method to represent the genotypes of a particular organism. So two methods where one uses just letters, other one uses plus sign for dominant and the mutant character of the other allele. Now just going over quickly with these different terminologies. First one is alleles, or they are also called as allelomorphs. These are various forms of gene which are located at the same locus on the homologous chromosome. Homologous chromosome refers to gene, one of the gene copy that is coming from mother and the same chromosome number copies coming from father. They are called as homologous chromosome. Let's say for example, chromosome number 1 has two sets that is two sister chromatids, right? And that way they are homologous chromosomes, and they will individually have a particular location on that particular chromosome, and they will be called as alleles of one particular gene. It is nothing but for tallness or the dwarfness or any particular phenotype or physical characteristic, there will always be two alleles, that means two copies of the genes will be present on the chromosome, and which will ultimately control the same character. Both of these genes or both of these alleles, they control the same character. So character can be a height of the person, so then it can have a tall height or short height, or the skin color, then it can have a dark brown or whatever color. So that is like alleles. The term allele, it actually mean belonging to one another. So these alleles, they actually belong to one another, and that is where the word is coming from, and was introduced by this gentleman called Bateson in 1905, which is much after the Mendel's death. Then character, which means a distinct morphological or physiological feature. Now morphological, that you can see in terms of structure. Physiological, that is more in terms of a particular function within the body. So let's say, for example, like how much of the insulin to be produced in the body, that is a physiological process or feature of the person, right? And that particular feature or that particular character is coded by a certain gene. So both these distinct morphological as well as the physiological character, features of an organism, they are called as character. Examples: stem height in plants, flower color, eye color or skin color in human or any other organisms, and the seed shape. These are just the characters. Then a unit factor. Now the unit factor, it's equivalent of a gene, and this was used by Mendel specifically. Now we do not use this unit factor terminology at all. We straight away speak of genes, but this is just for your information that unit factor is nothing but a gene, which was terminology used by Mendel. It is the unit of inheritance which occurs singly in single haploid or in a haploid cell, and as a pair in diploid cell. So that is what is unit factor. Gene, this terminology was first given by this Danish botanist Johansen in 1909, and he used, instead of unit factor or even the determinants, how they were called by Mendel, he used the term gene. And genes are nothing but the segments of DNA, each of which has the formation of has information of the synthesis for a particular protein or polypeptide, which is same. Then genotype, the genetic makeup of an organism with respect to one another, like with respect to one or more character of the allele, that is the genotype, and it represents the gene in which it receives from two parents. So for example, if there are capital T, that is the genotype, right? And that is, if the tall is the dominant feature, phenotype of that genotype will be the tallness, right, of that particular image. So genotype is the genetic makeup, that means which alleles are present in that particular organism, whether it's a homozygous, heterozygous, and so on. That is nothing but the genotype. And phenotype is the external manifestation of the genotype. So because of those particular genes or alleles present in the body, what is the external manifestation, what is the characteristic being given to that particular organism, that is nothing but the phenotype, and it will represent the morphological and physiological character, which is something similar to your what we say, where is it, yeah, the character. So they will ultimately indicate what character does or what character is imparted to the organism. Homozygous, we usually say homozygous genotype. That means two alleles, they are same or identical, right? So capital T or small t, these are homozygous type of alleles. So when these two alleles of a character, they are identical, then the organism is said to be homozygous, or it is also called as pure organism in terms of allelic purity. Yeah. So that is the homozygous, and heterozygous is nothing but when there is capital T and small t, which means organism possesses contrasting allele. Contrasting allele is one will define for tallness, other will define for shortness, or one will define for yellow color of the seed and the other one will define for green color of the seed. These are contrasting alleles or contrasting characters for one particular trait. That is having two different alleles for the same character from its parent, and that is called as heterozygous, and that is also called as hybrid because it has two different sets of uh, like alleles or genes. Okay, any question here? I assume this is a kind of a revision for you people, so I'm relatively going fast through this. But yeah, if at all there are any questions, uh, again, so pure line is nothing but a line or a strain of homozygous true breeding organism. That is when you have a dominant plant which has both genotype or both alleles in their genotype are representing capital T, capital T. And when you self-pollinate it, it will again give capital T, and so on. For various generations, it will go on. That is the true breeding organism, and that is formed either through repeated self-fertilization or breeding between the homozygous identical ancestor. That is, whichever ancestor they are homozygous, between them, like if we cross or breed them, then it will create a pure line. Dominant and recessive, again, this we had discussed in the last class as well. So usually in case of heterozygous alleles, which possess two contrasting copies of the alleles. Out of those two, only one is expressed, and the one which is expressed is called as dominant. One which is not expressed is called as recessive. And we had also spoken about why the dominant and recessive exist at this moment. Then monohybrid cross, which we have seen earlier itself, that is the cross which involves the study of inheritance of only one pair of contrasting character. That is, for seed color, if seed color can be of two types, that is yellow or green, that is, but seed color is one trait, and for that there are two contrasting characters, that is yellow and green. Or plant height is one character and it has two phenotype, that is tall or dwarf plant. So these type of crosses, when we are doing with homozygous individuals, homozygous for tallness crossed with homozygous for dwarfness, or homozygous for yellow color of the seed crossed with homozygous for green color of the seed, when they are crossed, that is a type of cross which is called as monohybrid. And dihybrid cross, which is two pairs of contrasting characters taken into consideration while studying the inheritance. That is, let's say yellow color of the seed and a tall plant, and crossed with dwarf plant which has green color of the seeds. So that way, that two pairs or two traits of the character having two different subsets of contrasting phenotypes, that will be crossed further, that is dihybrid cross. And polyhybrid is nothing but more than two pairs they are considered for a particular trait. So that means all the character, let's say for example, plant height, flower color and seed color, these three you study at a time, that will be polyhybrid cross. Or let's say you add one more to it, for example pod shape, that is four characters you are studying all together, and then those four will have 8 different phenotypes, at least 8 minimum. Yeah. So that way it is polyhybrid cross. So monohybrid, dihybrid and polyhybrid cross. In your syllabus, you have a study of course, monohybrid, dihybrid, and we will be looking at the trihybrid as well just as a brief outline. Polyhybrid, we don't have to study as such because it's super complicated. And I guess last few terminologies. So reciprocal cross we had seen when this involves the two crosses concerning the same character but with reverse sexes. So let's say in first case I took tall or homozygous dominant plant which is male in terms of like anthers, and homozygous recessive dwarf that is in terms of female with stigma, and then you reverse it. That means in reversing, what will you do? Instead of taking anthers from the tall plant, you take it from the dwarf plant and you put it on the stigma of the tall plant. So that is the reciprocal cross. You just exchange the character between male and female, and then the same cross is done. Back cross, which is nothing but now let's say for example when F2 offsprings are obtained by self-pollination of F1 hybrids, so you get F2 generation, and but the F1 hybrids can be crossed with either of the two parents of the parental tribe. So this I will explain you here in this slide. So we had parent, we had F1 generation, and we had F2 generation. So when you cross F2 generation individual back with F1 generation individual, either of the parent, that is called as back cross, because you go back in the generation and then like setting up a cross of those two things. So that is nothing but a back cross. So F2 offsprings, whatever they are obtained by self-pollination of F1 hybrids, they are crossed with either of the two parents from the F1 generation, and such crosses between offspring and parent, that is between children and parent, they are called as back cross. And a test cross, which is nothing but a cross between heterozygous F1 hybrid and the recessive homozygous. That is, F1 hybrid is your capital T small t, that one is F1 hybrid, and the recessive homozygous, that means small t, that is the homozygous, that means both are same, and it is recessive, that is small t, and it is used to determine whether the individual exhibiting dominant character are homozygous or heterozygous. So this is specifically done to test whether the traits of the parent, when you are not aware of them, whether they are homozygous or heterozygous. So in simplest term, I will again go back here. So let's say when you cross this capital T small t with this small t, or you can take it from here also, that doesn't matter. We are just taking an example. So let's say these two are crossed with each other, one is male, other one is female. That particular type will be called as test cross, and that is specifically done to check what are the phenotypes present in these two, and obviously that is determined by similar process like how we determine in the monohybrid cross. So that is test cross. Then genome is the total number of genes present in the haploid set of chromosome, that is your genome. Punnett square is one type of method where you study the genotype and phenotype resulting from the fusion of gametes during the fertilization, and this particular method was designed by this guy, and that's why it is named after him, that is Punnett square, and it can be used for both monohybrid and dihybrid process. And with this you can write down all the possible gametes that are assigned to a column or row, and with those columns and row it will represent those particular gametes. I don't know, oh, there is a spelling mistake here, from the columns and rows for the female. So we will see that particular part here. So for example, like this is a type of Punnett square that we draw usually. So it is a simple square shaped diagram which is drawn to show possible combination of male and female F1 parents, right? So you have let's say this particular individual, one of the parent which has capital Y small y, and the other parent which is small y. Now this is homozygous recessive, this is heterozygous parent. So heterozygous parent is crossed with homozygous recessive parent. And when you get the crosses, you get these 4 possibilities. So based on the possibility, also you can identify the parents, how they are or what genotypes they are of. So that is nothing but, and then it is given in the different steps. I don't want to go into detail because I assume this is relatively very simple. But if there is a confusion, you can ask and then I'll go over it. So this is the Punnett square method to write down the genotype as well as the phenotype for a particular cross. Can be done with monohybrid, can be done with dihybrid. In both cases, it is possible. Okay. Then, just as a quick revision for monohybrid cross, let's say we have a rounded seed, which is the dominant phenomena, that is round seed, and wrinkled seed, that is the recessive phenomena. So the dominant homozygous dominant, when it is crossed with homozygous recessive seed shape, then what you get in F1 generation is 4 gametes or the individuals with capital R, small r, that is they are all heterozygous, but they are all round. Though they have recessive character, they are all round. And in next
So,
yes,
why did you get 4? Like, won't you get only 2?
no, we'll always get 4, no? This gamete will fuse with this, you get first. This gamete will fuse with second, you will get this. This gamete will fuse with this, you will get third. This gamete will fuse with this, you will
Okay, okay, okay.
get
So,
possible.
possibilities. I thought like the total.
Yeah, no, possibilities. Uh, so that is the F1 generation. And then again, putting any of these two in next cross for F1 cross, you get F2 generation where the phenotype ratio is 3:1, that is 3 rounded seeds, 1 wrinkled seed, and genotype ratio 1:1 homozygous dominant as to 2 heterozygous and as to 1 homozygous recessive. So that is the genotypic ratio 1:2:1. And this you will get with all the other crosses. Now, the next part is the dihybrid crosses or dihybrid ratios to actually check with the 2 pairs of contrasting character. Now, this is also done with homozygous dominant for both the traits and homozygous recessive for both the traits. If you were taking only capital R, that is homozygous dominant for round or seed shape. That is round is the dominant one. And capital Y, that is denoting the seed color, that is yellow color of the seed. So that is also dominant. So it is homozygous dominant for both the trait, that is seed shape as well as seed color. And this is homozygous recessive again for both the traits, that is small r for wrinkled and small y for green. Now again, this is the parent generation. When they are crossed, they will again give different gametes, but all the gametes will be of this type, that is capital R, capital Y. Here also they will give different gametes. Again, all the gametes will be of small r, small y. So when you set up this parent cross, what you get as individuals, again there will be many individuals that you will get, but all of them they will have this heterozygous phenotype, that is capital R, small r, capital Y, small y, which will exhibit the phenotype of round, because round is the dominant and yellow is the dominant. So round and yellow seeds in F1 generation. Now, when you set up F1 generation cross, that is this individual is self-pollinated. So capital R, capital Y, small y crossed with same individual, like similar individual, can be of same genotype or can be a self-pollination. That way, you actually get 4 gametes. Now, how 4 gametes? Look here, that capital R can fuse with capital Y, so that is one gamete. Then small r can fuse with capital Y, that is another gamete. Then capital R can fuse with small y, that is third gamete. And small r can fuse with small y with the next gamete, that is fourth gamete. So this way you get 4 gametes And these 4 gametes from one parent, and these 4 gametes from the another parent, which is same again. RY, capital R, capital Y, capital R, capital Y. So they are same here. And once you arrange these in Punnett square in the columns and in the front of the rows, you get this possibility of 16 individuals or 16 offsprings in F2 generation. Now, in this case, now if you look, capital R, so RR, that is both capital Y, again, the same thing. So this will exhibit round and yellow, and so on and so forth. So this second one is actually the second column and the first row. So that is capital R and small r. So that is your round phenotype again. But this is heterozygous for seed shape and homozygous for seed color. This is homozygous for both trait. This is for one trait, it is heterozygous, that is capital R, small r, and homozygous for seed color, that is capital Y, and both of these are coming. Let's say I take randomly this one. Yeah, in that case, it is the third column and the second row. So capital R and small r and capital Y and small I, again it is round and yellow. For example, this box, it is second row, second column. Both are small r, they are coming from these gametes, from those respective parents, and capital Y. Now, in this case, both are homozygous. Both traits, they are homozygous, but one is homozygous recessive, that is small r, and capital Y, that is homozygous dominant for the seed color, homozygous recessive for the seed shape. So you will have wrinkled seed instead of round, and yellow color of the seed. So that way, all these 16 possible individuals are checked, and what you get at the end is 9 of round and yellow phenotypes. So you have these 9 from the phenotypic ratio. You can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So these yellow boxes, they are 9. So that is, they are all round and yellow. Genotypically, they are all different. Different in the sense, they can have homozygous dominant like capital RR, or they can also have capital R, small r, that is heterozygous. So both of these will still show round phenotype. So they are 9 like this, which are round and yellow in terms of phenotype. Then next 3 is round and green, that is capital R. Again, this can be homozygous for round or seed shape, or heterozygous for seed shape. But both of these will still show round round shape of the seed, and that is round and green. Again, green is recessive, so they will all have small y, which is homozygous recessive. So these 3, next one, and then this green one that you see, that is wrinkled and yellow, and the last one that you get is both homozygous recessive, that is wrinkled and green. So 9:3:3:1, that is the phenotypic ratio that you get. Genotypic ratio is complex, because if you look at this box, you can only find one of these, right? So that means 1. You can find capital R, small r, and YY, 2. Then these ones, if you see, RR, YY, that is capital Y and small y, these are again 2. Then these are again 2. So that way you can find so many phenotypes. So 1 has to, 2 has to, 2 has to, and it will go on. So that way it is going to be very complex, and individually you have to write every time what that genotype refers to. So that is the dihybrid cross in general. Do you have any doubt? I have another example here. It's not another example, it just represented it in a better way compared to the previous one. You can go over this, and I will give you one small like example for the homework, so that you will get an idea of what the dihybrid process, because quite a
Sir,
yes.
can you go to the previous slide?
Hmm?
Yes, that's all. I don't have any.
So depending on like what genotypes we are taking in the individuals, the dihybrid ratios will show different phenotypes. Any question? Anyone so far? Pratham, clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Remember, this is very important in terms of even your competitive examination that you are going to give, and also with respect to your board exam, because there are at least one 5-mark question being asked from these topics, either monohybrid cross or dihybrid cross. So that way these are actually very important topics, and also there can be several questions which can be designed. So we'll be practicing few of the questions maybe at the end of the chapter also, or maybe I'll give it for as a worksheet to you people. So that is the dihybrid ratio, and just another way that it has been represented. It looks very neat to the eyes, so you can go over this. Remember, the most important thing that we are doing both in monohybrid cross as well as dihybrid cross is we are crossing the individual that is homozygous dominant to homozygous recessive. Even in the monohybrid cross that we had done, this was homozygous dominant but for a single trait, to a homozygous recessive again for a single trait. Here we are taking homozygous dominant for both the traits and homozygous recessive again for the both traits, and that is the way to go forward about it. Now so that is the dihybrid cross. Yeah, this is one more representation I found, but here specifically they had written in terms of what alleles they are carrying in terms of their ratio, and that is why I have kept it here. So individually they will all be 1/60, and then if you look at all the yellow, they will make it 9. So totally 9 out of 16. Then this green, they will be 3 out of 16, and then these 3, that is yellow and wrinkled seed, that will be 3 out of 16, and this is 1 out of 16. So that way this is given here. So that's why I have kept this slide here, so that even if the question is write down the probabilities of offspring formation in the dihybrid cross, so these will be the probabilities, right? That is 1 out of 16 or 1 in 16 and so on. So that is the probability given in this slide. Okay, now there is something called as fourth line method to perform dihybrid cross. Now in case of fork line method, it is nothing but this is called as fork, which is like triangular, and then these are lines, so fork line methods. So this is again a very simple. Now if you are taking two traits, that is seed shape can be round or wrinkled, this is for round, this is for wrinkled, and seed color, that is yellow and green, this capital Y is yellow, small y is green. So that way if you are studying dihybrid cross by a fork line method, so you set up a monohybrid cross, you get these 4 individuals, right? You set up a monohybrid cross for the seed color, you get these individuals. Now individually this gamete can fuse with this gamete, that is capital R, capital R. So you write down these 3 gamete, capital Y, capital Y, capital Y, small y. So capital Y, capital Y, capital Y, small y, and small y, right? So these 3 gametes you write down, like both of these they are considered same, right? Because they are ultimately same in genotype as well as phenotype. So the possibility of this individually, these one, these 2, and then this third one, they fusing with this will remain same. So what you take is capital R, that is first one, and then you fuse with this one, that is first offspring for the dihybrid cross in F2 generation. Then this capital RR, you take it with this individual, that is capital Y, small y, and then you get this one, second possibility. Then you again take capital R with this homozygous recessive, small y, you get this individual, and then you do same for this capital R, small r, and small r. So that is nothing but called as a fork line method. Again, I hope this is clear, because it is nothing great here. It's just the same hybrid cross, but instead of doing it in a Punnett square, the F2 generation that is done via the fork line method, and that is what is being shown here. So individually you take these offsprings and then cross with these other for the other trait, and that is what you get at the end. Remember, this is just the method of representation. In this case, it does not mean that you are separated the characters, that is for the seed shape and the seed color, and then you are fusing it again. No, this is just the way of representation that has been done. The crosses are still done in the same way like it is done here, right? What you see here, these two individuals will be crossed. You will get some F1 generation, and F1 generation self-pollination, or similar individuals they are crossed, and then you get F2. So same thing is done there also. It just the way we had represented here as Punnett square. Instead, here is a fork line method. That's it, nothing different. Okay, any question here? I hope this is clear as well. No one really uses fork line method as such these days. But this is again like as a part of the syllabus, it is mentioned, so we should just be aware of it. Okay, and then the next one, that is the tri-hybrid cross by a fork line method. Tri-hybrid cross to do with the Punnett square method is little difficult. You can imagine you will have to have a three-dimensional cube, right, with 4 rather 6 phenotypes. I hope you are able to imagine. If not, you can just forget it, because you will have these 1 2 3 4 5 6 phenotypes with other possible combinations. So you will have a cube of 3 by 3, but in three-dimensional space, like x, y, z, and then you can possibly do that tri-hybrid cross. But to do it with fork line method, it becomes very simple. So again, you set up these different crosses individually. What you get is these different phenotypes. So you take AA, that is capital A, small a. You take capital B, and capital C, capital C. So that is first individual. Then second individual will be this 1, 2, and the second one. And third individual will be this capital A, small a, capital B, B, and then the small cc. So that way you can keep doing, and then the next individuals will be 1, 2, and the first one here. So that way you keep going on, and then you will get the ratios based on like these individuals you will keep getting in terms of their phenotype. And the ABC is just a kind of random genotype that they have taken, but actually you can take any of the Mendelian characters. Like for example, you can take seed shape, seed color, and then you add a flower color to it, and then you keep doing this fork line method. You will get various individuals. So you will ultimately get 3 plus 3, that is 6, and these 6, 12 individuals with different proportions, as in these ratios will be very different. We don't have to write the phenotype and genotype ratio of them, but surely we need to be aware what kind of possible offsprings they will produce at the end of F2 generation in the tri-hybrid cross. So that is the one example that I have depicted here. Just for simpler practice, you can try and complete the rest of them, and you can also calculate the ratio by the end. So you will get an idea of the phenotypic ratio, and you can do it actually with certain phenotypes. So you can also write the phenotype, whether this is what, and this is what, and then that individual will have what phenotype. So that and again, just for the simplicity, you can also do the homozygous dominant, that is capital A, capital A, capital B, capital B, capital C, like that, with the homozygous recessive one, that is all small. And that way it will be much easier for you to calculate things, because this was available picture on the internet, so I have taken it as it is without changing anything here. But otherwise, you can take the homozygous dominant first parent and homozygous recessive second parent. So that is the trihybrid cross. Okay, let me just finish this part of Mendel's laws of inheritance. Now, looking at those monohybrid, dihybrid, and crosses, whatever Mendel did, he ultimately led to certain postulates which became laws. Those laws, they are known as Mendel's laws of inheritance. Now, these are the three specific laws. That is, first one, law of dominance, which means out of a pair of contrasting character present together, only one is able to express and the other one remains suppressed. That we already know in the heterozygous individual, and the one which is expressed is called as dominant, and the unexpressed one is called as recessive. And that is the law of dominance. That is, out of a pair of contrasting character in the heterozygous individual present together, only one is expressed. That is the law statement, and the other will remain suppressed. So the one which is expressed is dominant, one which is not expressed is recessive. The recessive character can express only when the pair consists of both recessive. So we know that if it is only small r or small y, in that case only the recessive phenotype will be exhibited. Otherwise, just for a quick example to you, here, even though there is a small r present in both of these individuals or in all of these individuals, they will not show a wrinkled phenotype, because it will only show the dominant, because that is the dominant allele, and that's why this phenotype, that is small r, will be only exhibited when both are homozygous alleles. That is same allele for the recessive phenotype. So that is what the first law says, that is law of dominance. Actually for this recessive, it is also called as law of recessiveness, but that is ultimately part of law of dominance. So in some reference books, you can also find this law being called as law of dominance and recessiveness, or this is separately called as, this last statement is separately called as law of recessiveness. But for us, we will just stick to as law of dominance. Second law is the law of segregation, or which is also called as purity of gametes. In this, the two members of pair of factors. Now again, like I mentioned, Mendel referred to it as factor, and the gene terminology came in later. So the two members of a pair of alleles or genes, they separate during the gamete formation. That is, whether they have capital T or capital T, both will separate in the gamete formation. Or if it has X and Y chromosome, both will separate in the gamete formation. Like, then we say, when the male is producing sperm, half of the sperms will have X chromosome, half of the sperms will produce Y chromosome. Or let's say there is a genotype of capital R, small r. One of the gamete will have capital R, and the other gamete will have small r, and that is the separation during the gamete formation process. So the two members of a pair of alleles, they separate during gamete formation, and they do not blend but segregate into different gametes, and they do not come closer from the same individual, because even in case of sperm, though there is X and Y, they don't fuse themselves like amongst themselves, right? Otherwise, that would have been much easier. A sperm fusing with X chromosome to a sperm with Y chromosome, and then it is creating a male child. That does not happen. It always fuses with the ovum with whatever gamete again, whether X, no, of course only X, right? So that is, so they do not blend together, but they segregate into different gametes, and then these gametes will combine together by a random fusion at the time of fertilization. And that is when whenever we write monohybrid or dihybrid process, we do not write only few offsprings, we write all the possibilities. That is, out of these, any of the possibility in terms of offspring can occur in reality. So that is the law of segregation, where the gametes will segregate the different alleles. Or it is also called as law of purity of gametes, because the gametes, they are being pure for one particular trait. Now, the third law is the law of independent assortment. In this, like whenever there are two pairs of character or two pairs of traits, the distribution of the allele of one character into the gamete is totally independent of the distribution of alleles into the other character. What does this mean? Is, again, I will explain in this. For example, yeah, I can explain in this here. So when these gametes are being formed here, right, what is going into the gametes is independent of the other parent, or whatever is forming in this parent in terms of gamete is totally independent of this parent. They in this case, they are look like they are all same. Of course they are same, but they are, while these are being formed, or while these are being formed, they are independent of the other parent. They are not actually dependent on the other parent gamete formation. And that is what the statement says. When there are two pairs of characters, the distribution of alleles, that is whether capital R or small r or capital Y or small y, for one particular character individually, whether you take it for seed shape or seed color at one time, into the gamete is independent of the distribution of alleles of the other character. And this is visible in the production of gamete in F1 hybrid, in the dihybrid process. So that is where this gamete formation, which is the F1 hybrid. So this Y is not dependent on this trait. So it can go with capital Y, capital R, or it can also go with capital Y, small r. So that way, these are not dependent on each other in this gamete formation process. So that is the law of independent assortment. That means whenever the gametes are being formed in those generations, they will independently form irrespective of each other. So these are the three Mendel's laws. Okay, so I guess I will take a stop here. Anyone has any question?